Hi, I'm Amy.
And I'm Kirsty.
And this is our podcast covering the highs, lows, and realities of parenting a child with neurodiversity.
Each week we'll be sharing updates from our lives and hearing from a variety of guests about their advice and experiences.
This is Love Needs No Words. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Love Needs No Words. Today we are joined by Pen Bates. Pen is mum to son Connor, who was diagnosed with autism at 7. He's had epilepsy since he was 8 weeks old and has a learning disability. He's now 24, drives, and is looking to live independently. It's not been the easiest of journeys, of which Connor is still on, but Penelope told us that if she'd had a crystal ball when he was younger, looking into the future, she'd have been amazed and in awe to know what he would achieve and to see him now. Penelope, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Lovely to be able to chat to you both. Connor is 24, but born in 2001. He was full term, a water birth, and all seemed fine. But quickly things started to not seem quite right. And at 8 weeks old, he was diagnosed with what they called idiopathic epilepsy. So they didn't really know the cause. And then further down the line, about 19 weeks, he was diagnosed with a thing called infantile spasms. Now, if we'd looked in the crystal ball then, it wouldn't have been very good, because after that, he had MRI scans and they thought he might have a not very nice condition called tuberous sclerosis. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, but it's always been the case that they don't really know what caused his epilepsy. So it was quite a difficult few years for Connor especially, and us, because he had multiple seizures and he was put on lots of different anti-epileptic drugs to try and control the seizures. And it was those drugs, they think, that then obviously caused the learning delay, the learning disability. And then along with that came age 6, 7, an autism diagnosis, because there was social communication, speech and language issues as well. So it was an awful lot to deal with. And and it was full on. He had EEGs, where you put the electrodes on your head. And I think, you're always trying to find an answer and a reason. But we never really got one, and we still haven't ever really had one. So I think you sort of come to accept that it's just something that happened and it's nobody's fault. But that's quite difficult, I think, to not have anything tangible that gives you a reason why it ever happened. They did find a tiny cyst on the bottom part of his brain, and they wondered if that might have been the cause. But I mean, over time, that hasn't really, been an issue anymore. It's sort of just dealing with the consequences of it. So he went to a special preschool because he wasn't reaching his milestones, and we were told, first of all, it was a sort of 5-month delay, and then it increased. So this was quite scary for us, because we were like, well, how much is he going to develop? So you start to question all of that. So he went to a special preschool, which was wonderful. And they used to that's where he started to learn Makaton. I don't know if you've come across Makaton. So I remember we still sing the little songs that they
I love that.
Even now, which is quite funny. So hello and where I can't remember Makaton anymore, because we don't use it anymore, because he doesn't need it, because he's very verbal. But yes, he started off not really being verbal. We had a few da dee dees when he was sort of 1. But the Makaton really, really brought on his speech. It was incredible. And if you're at that point now, have faith, because I think it brings on the language, because we were worried it would stop the development of the language, but actually I think it did. It helped him. But going into that sort of structured environment, he found incredibly challenging, and I think that's when we started to realize we were dealing with more than just a delay and the epilepsy. We were like, there's other things going on. So he got this diagnosis of autism, but to be honest, it was the epilepsy that was the biggest thing, has been all through his life, rather than the autism. That's sort of been alongside. But because the epilepsy was so difficult, that was the bit we focused on, and the sort of autism was sort of another bit.
I was just going to say, how did it feel to have a 6-week-old baby and be in a position where your baby's having presumably fits or seizures?
Really frightening.
Yeah.
Because you question yourself, because I remember saying to my mother-in-law, I was with her one day, and when he first started doing these funny moves, because they were like little twitches, and I kept asking different people. I remember her saying, I don't think that's quite right, you know. And so you have to sort of have courage, really. I went back to the GP several times, and then eventually, I think it was about the third time, this particular GP I went to see was like, no, he needs to go into hospital, he needs to be assessed, and he was in hospital for a week. And then you have the scary prospect of he had to have a MRI scan because they're trying to work out what's going on. And then you have these doctors come into the room with a whole entourage, and you're like, what are they going to tell us? But it seems like ancient history now, you know.
Yeah,
so
I bet.
It didn't last. He's developed more recently, so he sort of went to special school, went to college, but I think his development has been more obvious, more pronounced, more recently. So
That's interesting.
So he's sort of done these amazing things more recently. I mean, he will always have an intellectual disability, which manifests as sort of processing, you know, so understanding. But you know, he's managed over the years to sort of mask quite a lot, and sort of come across as understanding. But if you sort of throw too much information at him, you know that not a lot of that has gone in, and he's only managed to process a certain amount.
Yes.
Yeah.
We talk about this crystal ball a lot, don't we, Kirst? Like wishing that sometimes we could just look into the future and know everything's going to be all right, so we can stop worrying now. Alex, when we started this podcast a year ago, he wasn't saying a word, hence the name. And then he's just started to say words now. And even a year ago, I was saying to Kirsty, if I could have looked back, and even Kirsty says, if we could have looked together, I would have been able to say, look, it's going to be all right. But there was times where I had to come to terms with the fact he might never speak.
He might not. Yeah, we had that same
feeling. And it's sort of like you say, you feel very lonely, and you feel you don't know how to feel, because like if you knew everything was going to be all right, it would make you feel so much better. What are some of the things that Connor's doing now? You mentioned college there, which for me is amazing, that you didn't expect him to do.
No, so because of his EHCP, he could have been in education till he was 25, but he was actually in education till he was about 21. So he went from secondary school to a sort of supported life skills course.
Oh, brilliant.
So he got functional English and maths. So, you know, and when he finished secondary school, special secondary school, he came away with all these qualifications. I don't really know what they meant. They were sort of called P levels. So they were sort of the more simple level. And that was all good, but it didn't really have a lot of meaning in the sense of what that equip him to do. So going to college and doing the life skills was really good. And at that point, he lived away from us part-time in a college that was supported living. So that was a massive transition for him and a huge development. And it wasn't a plain sailing. It wasn't totally smooth, but he learnt a lot of independence there. They were teaching them how to sort of travel independently on public transport, how to do budgeting for shopping and things like that. And one of the really good things there is he made his first proper sort of really good friendship group. That finished, and then he ended up going to another college, because at that point he decided he wanted to study horticulture, and he seemed to be he's not very academic. He can't, you know, his numeracy isn't at a high level at all. He's got that sort of functional level. So he went to agricultural college not far from where we live and did horticulture, and that was again with within a supported unit, so he's always had that support. At that point we thought, oh, this is something that he can really do something with, and this is going to equip him to actually maybe get employment, because I'm sure, you know, it goes through your minds, oh my goodness, are they ever going to be independent? Are they going to be able to have a job? And we didn't necessarily think he would, but once he got to that college, we started to believe that this was possible. So he, to fast forward, he got offered a job. Unfortunately, things then went pear-shaped. So this is sort of to bear in mind, and I'm sure, you know, your boys at some point will get to this point and have faith in that.
Absolutely.
But always try to think about what support they could have in the workplace. And it's something we hadn't fully appreciated. We were a bit naive. So he got offered this job, and it was quite a prestigious job, working for some people on a private estate. But unfortunately, they didn't have any experience of someone with a learning disability, let alone epilepsy and autism. And I've always been very open and upfront. So I was like, I went along with him to the interview to support him, because he'd never had an interview before, proper one. And so the agreement was that they would give it a go. And they did try to sort of support him, but it was a job where, you know, his confidence got eroded. He didn't have the support he needed, and we just thought, oh, it'll be fine, and we just sort of said, oh, it'll be fine, you know, and you're doing fine, and actually wasn't. So we didn't listen enough to him, and it ended up him being really traumatized, and it wasn't very good, and he ended up having to have some therapy to help him, because his anxiety levels just went through the roof, and he got very emotional, very, very upset, and he had to leave the job. And it was just really unfortunate. And I just think it was naivety on our part and not realizing how much support he actually needs. So then fast forward again, he then got another job through friends of ours. So we're very fortunate to have friends who've got big gardens, and he works there, and he's been working there happily. He works there 2 days a week, and he's supported, and they pay for that support. But there are things that you can do. So there's access to work and things like that. This is may seem miles off for you, but just sort of
quick
log it. Yeah. So and by the time your boys are older, it might be called something different and look different. But sort of seek out that support if you need to, because with that support, he's actually doing really well and he's thriving. And then he's got a second job working for an organisation who actually have public gardens for adults with learning disabilities, but he's employed, so it's quite nice. So although he has a learning disability, he's more able, and then he's supporting some of the less able. So that's 2 jobs, and then tomorrow he's got an interview for another job.
Wow.
He's being greedy. I know.
He's going to be a busy guy.
It's like one sort of success leads to another. So his confidence.
I was going to say, it's given him some confidence, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's thinking, well, I can do this. And one of the organisations, he can.
With the right support.
Yeah.
But it shows a glaring hole, doesn't it, in the support that's out there in the workplace for, you know,
really is
anybody that has an additional need.
I get on my high horse about it, because they go to college and they do life skills, and then there's the employability support is not great. And I think they should focus more on that, because even getting a job is incredibly difficult. And if you have to go through an interview like a mainstream neurotypical person without support, which Connor actually did for a job at Sainsbury's, and it was horrendous. Because again, we made the mistake of not realizing that we should have put something in place before the interview. And he went to the interview and he just couldn't really answer the questions, and it was very tricky. So I think if the support's there, then they can show they can do the job, because they might not be able to do the interview, but they can do the job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's where there's a gap, isn't there? So this other job, if he gets it, is supporting. So it's all in that same sort of world of supporting people with learning physical disabilities and learning disabilities who want to cycle in the New Forest. So
Oh,
he's hoping to get that, and that's come through one of the other jobs. So I think it mushrooms, if you get something. But he's got friends who've got additional needs, special needs, whatever we call it these days, and they may not have perhaps the support that Connor's had, or the luck, and also the privilege, really, that because of some of the friends we've had who've helped him, and they're really struggling, and they can't get a job because they're against everybody else. And they can't, and if they do get a job, they just interview badly,
yes.
so you need someone to advocate for you, I think.
Yeah, and that's heartbreaking, isn't it, really, that it comes
It's
down to all of those things
really,
that you just spoke about a bit of luck, privilege, etc. And you think,
yeah.
actually, you can really clearly see from what you're talking about with Connor that he's thriving with the opportunity to actually do what he enjoys and that he's
Yeah.
good at.
Yeah.
And an interview is, from what you're saying, clearly not his strength. So
No,
it's always
no.
going to be a struggle, but is the first hurdle that so many people have to get over before
Yeah.
they can even get into that position of
Yeah.
doing the job that they so want to do and are probably really capable of doing as well.
I
Yeah.
think they need to change the process for recruitment for people to make it more accessible, so that what was good about this cycling job that he's got the interview for tomorrow is he went for a trial where he went with an employability support person who took him, introduced him, and they just went off on the bikes, and he was brilliant because he's really good at cycling.
Yeah.
He goes off and cycles independently for 30 miles. So one of the things I was going to tell you about, if you've got your crystal ball,
Yeah.
there was absolutely no way I thought Connor was going to drive. Okay, he's always been obsessed with cars. And I remember he was going through a difficult patch and he was having a bit of psychological support for anxiety. And I remember getting quite upset with the psychologist and saying, oh, he would love to drive, and I'm just very nervous about it. And I just don't know that his processing is quick enough. I'd worry. And she said, oh, no, I don't think that Connor could drive. Anyway, so that was in my head. And then he was just absolutely determined that he was going to drive. And so my husband persuaded me that we should at least give it a try. And so we said, well, if you pass your theory, then you can have driving lessons. And he did on the third attempt. He spent hours learning the highway code, whereas, a neurotypical, well, he was 20 at the time, a neurotypical young male probably would not even bother to open the book. This is the difference. So he just applied himself. He practiced and practiced and practiced. And then we managed to find him a driving instructor. I'm always Googling and searching. That's something you've got to get good at.
We're good at that.
We're
finding it already. Yeah.
Masters of the research.
That'll never end.
Yeah.
And then share it all with your friends, because it's nice to share, isn't it, what you find. And so I found this really good instructor. She was amazing. And I was very upfront and I said, could you do a trial and just tell me if you think he's safe to drive, if you think he's... And they were like, yeah, he just needs to take a bit longer. It might take him a while. And it took him probably a year of lessons. And I wouldn't go in the car with him because I am the worst person to teach anyone to drive. I'm very nervous. So it wasn't any good me doing it. We decided it was better for the teacher to do it all, so he didn't learn bad habits. Anyway, cheeky fella, he came to the door after the test and had this sad face. I was like, oh, and he went, I'm joking, I passed. And he passed first time.
Oh, this
First
is
time.
brilliant.
That's incredible.
But a little tip, the instructor was allowed to sit in the car during the test. So you can request that.
Okay.
So if you get to that point ever,
Yeah.
another thing to bear in mind.
We're joined by Leona Smith, who is mum to two children, Emmy and Arthur. Arthur has autism and is non-speaking, and Leona has been sharing his journey through her Instagram page at Leona Jade Smith. Leona, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
So to start, can you just talk us through a little bit about Arthur and his journey?
Yeah, I can. So Arthur was diagnosed. It was 2 days after his second birthday. We got a diagnosis, but leading up to that, we knew things were different. So Arthur was born literally 3 weeks before COVID hit. So it was 2020. It was March, 2nd of March, and I had a really traumatic labour, and then you get the 3 weeks where everyone come and see you, and then nothing. You don't see anyone, do you? We was in a bubble for 3 months, and I don't know. Even then, I struggled. I put a lot of it down to postnatal depression, or I just kept saying to Josh throughout when he was a baby was, I don't think he's bothered about me. I don't think he knows I'm his mummy. Like he wasn't an unhappy baby, or he's very sicky. He had a lot of reflux. Like we tried every different milk, and I don't know if that's linked at all, or but I just felt that he wasn't. Yeah, he just wasn't. He was chilled, but he wasn't fussed. And then came the. He wasn't like he didn't respond to his name, and he'd play but turn his back to us, and he did a lot of hand flapping, and legs were constantly moving. It wasn't just a one-off, it was constant. Like, and we'd all make little jokes about, like some of the movements and that. And I remember we went on my dad's drive, and on his Ring doorbell camera he said it looked like Arthur was on fast motion, like with his legs. That's he looked back on the camera, and like, yeah. And he did a couple of, he'd smile at some family sometimes, and he'd waved once, and then it just stopped, like nothing. But we've never had any words. He's only recently started answering to his name, and I don't know, I think when I think back of that, I think because he was my first, like your two, like that, when they're your first as well, it's all new to you anyway, isn't it? And you do take on board what people are saying. I think you're looking things up. And I remember watching I don't know if you've watched Miss Rachel with any of your two. Like the woman.
I've managed to avoid Miss Rachel, and I don't know how.
I mean, she's amazing, but she drives you up the fucking wall. But on her clips, it tells you when the baby should be doing stuff. So they should be doing things like clapping by, I don't know, 9 months or whatever. And I remember looking at it thinking, he's not doing that. And I remember going to baby groups in between when you lockdown opens a bit, and
you go quick, get out.
Oh yeah, and I'd book onto all these baby sensory and
same.
do all this stuff, and Arthur he just wasn't the same as the other kids. I can't even explain. There was just a difference. And then the not talking, and I had a group of NCT mums, lovely girls, but every time I met up with them, I just felt like I was the odd one out all the time. And they did nothing wrong, like it wasn't them at all. And I completely pulled myself away, because I just couldn't bear it. I couldn't be around them. And I had other friends of children similar ages, but that was different. It's friends I'd grown up with. And it took, so we did his first birthday, we did a cake smash. I ordered everything you're meant to order a 1-year-old, and he weren't interested in any of it. And the cake smash, I look back at videos now and think, oh my God, I was really cruel. Like he didn't want to touch it. He was weren't interested in anything. And it was my mum that said to me, like, they call me Lone, and she said, Lone, do you think maybe Arthur's autistic? And I was like, no, I don't. But I had gone down a bit in the rabbit hole of autism, because my brother's autistic, not to Arthur's level, so I knew a little bit about autism. And obviously you question things and that, and then I started getting lost down the rabbit hole of autism. When you Google everything, and you watch videos online, and you talk to the health visitor, and he scored, I remember the scoring, like really, it was above, like he was really delayed, really delayed. And we went for a hearing test, because that's the process. I don't know if you had to do a hearing test. But it would make me laugh, because he wouldn't respond to his name, but he would go crawling over to Peppa Pig if he heard Peppa Pig.
Oh yeah,
you know it's not their hearing. As their mum, you know it's not their hearing, and still they make you go through it.
Yeah, I just think it's a process, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, they have to rule it out.
Yeah, and then we went on the list for paediatrician. and I started going down the private route. I thought, right, I need a speech and language therapist anyway. I don't know what I needed. I just needed something. I knew that he was autistic. I had it in my mind now. I was like, he's autistic, you know. And we started the private route. A lot of money, so my family all chipped in. And what we did is we did it in 2 sections. So the speech and language therapists come out and they do, I don't know if it's the same with you, it's called an ADOS assessment. So she did the first half of that, and amazing woman was with us for hours, gave us loads of tips about play and speech and language, and told us little things to get, like to help develop interaction, and did that intensive interaction stuff. So she did her bit. We gave us that side of the assessment, and then I booked the other half, but I didn't have to pay for that yet. And then while we was waiting for that, because it was like a few weeks down the line, I wouldn't leave the NHS paediatrician alone. I was on their case, like literally ringing them constantly. And my office where I worked at the time, the admin for the paediatrician team was upstairs. So I just kept going up there. Hello. Like, hello.
It's me again.
Yeah,
Any news on that appointment? Anything?
Yeah. So one day I went up there with my lunch and this lady was like, he's not on the list anymore. And I was like,
Oh, for
what?
goodness sake.
Yeah. And then she was like, I tell you what, I'll get him in for Thursday. And I was like, okay, go on then. Get him in there quick. So she got him in. I went with my mum to the appointment, and in the appointment Arthur went in there and just trashed the place completely. The paediatrician was like, whoa, like, yeah, then started getting the keyboard and the paperwork and started eating the paper, and it was like me and my mum were like, oh. Got him in the buggy with his crisps and that, and he said, he said, I can start the process. And I said, I'll stop you. I've got the first half of the assessment with me. Can you look at it? And he said, okay. So he had a look at it. We went out, went back in. He did the other half of the assessment, and he gave us a diagnosis that day.
Oh, amazing.
If I could go back and give myself a big hug, like to say it's all right, like, yeah, it's a lot. It's allowed to feel a lot. Like you're allowed to feel I've spoke about this before, like feel all them emotions and get lost in them for a bit, but don't sit in them for too long, because you can't. You can't. You need to find your outlet, and you need to find your people.
I think all of us can relate to wanting to go back to that person that just found out that diagnosis and give them the biggest hug and just say everything's going to be all right. Like you'll find your people, you'll find help, and you'll get through it. Right now this is shit, but we'll get through it.
And you're allowed to feel shit, like
you are.
Don't ever brush that off. And nothing you did,
that's a really good point.
You did nothing wrong. Nothing you did caused your child to have a disability, like nothing. And I think you do blame yourself with little things. You do think, should I have done this? Should I have done that? Nothing you did is wrong.
Welcome to this week's episode of Love Needs No Words. Today we're joined by Charlotte, or Twins, Tides and Autism Vibes on Instagram. Charlotte is mum to Jude and Tommy, who are social media stars in their own right. So many of us have been following their story and have learnt so much along the way. Charlotte is also mum to twin girls, and when she's not being a mummy, she's also a big part of SAA Clothing, Shop Autism Awareness Clothing. Thank you so much for joining us, Charlotte.
Thanks for having me.
Lovely to have you here. So for those who don't know about Jude and Tommy, the real stars of the show, and also sort of the reason that you've been able to raise so much awareness of autism and neurodiversity, can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yep, so Jude is 17, Tommy is 14. They are both nonverbal and they are diagnosed autistic, ADHD, alongside Jude, who was diagnosed with global development delay. We've never had a relabel for that. And Tommy also has Tourette's. And life has been pretty busy and electric ever since they came along. So, and like you said, I think Jude and Tommy, James has worked so tirelessly over the last 10 years, telling their story, advocating that everybody kind of knows them already, and not just knows them, has grown up with them and watched their story kind of unfold. And it's one of pure heartbreak, one of joy, one of turbulence, and one really that is still unfolding every day for us. But it's been a real journey, that's for sure.
You speak so articulately though, and it always I'm always absolutely in awe of the way that you manage to say the things on your social media that I'm thinking, but I just don't have the ability. I don't know why, I just can't find the words. But you seem to be able to absolutely sum it up. And I think, that's exactly what I would say if somebody asked me. But for whatever reason, I can't do it. Maybe that's a time thing as well, and just being able to reflect on it.
I think that's it, Kirsty. Like I've come so late out of the gate. You know, for years I was this hidden entity that people were like, "Oh, I wonder what the mum's like," you know, or "Well, where is the mum?" You know, I've seen messages like in old posts saying, "Well, doesn't the mum do anything? Doesn't she?" But
like, if only you knew.
and it is a real team effort of parenting.
Yeah.
Our co-parenting, like I've sort of advocated for years, is one of the most success stories of it all. And how we've had to make heartbreaking decisions to separate our children, and how we have still always come back to a unified group of family that just want to be together, but we're having to do it at a very, very slow pace. And I mean, I look back now and think, if I was to read our story and it not be mine, I'd think, what? Like, how is that possible? I could never do that. How could I separate my children? How could I? But when you live and breathe what those moments look like, and as much as those choices are hard, they are the only choice in the end for us to survive, for our children to be able to grow, and become the people that they need to become. Because in an environment that is so overwhelming, there was just no progression, and we were standing still for so long. And we knew that the only way to break that cycle was by making such big decisions. And that decision was to separate Jude and Tommy, and co-parent day by day, swapping over, and that's exhausting.
Yeah, I bet. At what age did the boys end up living with you or James? Sorry.
So Tommy was 3 and Jude was 6. Actually, no, Tommy was 4 and Jude was 7. It seems so long ago now. So
I bet.
We're going on to around the 9-year mark of them of not kind of being together.
Yeah.
And it's worked. It's been hard, but it's made the differences that we so desperately used to lay in bed and go, please let tomorrow just be a happy day. Please don't let Jude hit himself anymore. Please don't let Jude, have a meltdown. Please let, all of those things that, you guys probably know, when you don't get much sleep as a Sen mum, that's when in those kind of witching hours, of 2
spiral, don't you? Yeah.
Do, and that's where you wish life was so different, or why is this me, or why can't Jude just be happy? And it's in those moments that now I lay in bed and think, God, all those things that we wanted, they've happened. They have happened through the choices that we've made. And I'm now, when people say happiness is a choice, it really is. And I think this has been as kind of testament to that, to realize, God, you are in charge of your own happiness. And it just takes a long time to kind of make those decisions, but they've been, groundbreaking for us. Jude's global development delay really does hold him back from progressing in the, I guess, general milestones. And I mean, autism makes it harder to reach those milestones, but with the right work and the right input and the right therapies, you can achieve that. But global development delay works very differently from that, because it is a learning difficulty. And Jude can't mark make, and he probably never will mark make, because there's just the wires in his brain that are not connecting to make him do that. So I think when Jude was younger, everything feels a little bit more sad for you, because it's you that are going to the baby groups, watching everybody else say, "Oh, look what little Jake's doing now, and
Mm.
this is amazing," and it's you that sits there and goes, "Oh, but my baby Jude's not doing that." And I think the early years felt very much it was my torment, my sadness, and my why can't I just have what everybody else has?
Yeah.
As I've got older and Jude has got older, that really changes into something quite different. And it's now I get angry that Jude isn't doing driving lessons now. Not for me, for him. Because he deserves that and I would want that for him. And a lot of people say, yeah, but that's what you're sad about. And it is what I'm sad about. Because of course, it's a natural progression on his 17th birthday that he opens a card and then there is that, 20 driving lessons, and he's like, woohoo, I'm out of this town soon. But I think I'm sad for Jude because he those choices are taken away from him because of the way that he was born, and he was born into a body that only allows him to do what he can do, and the global development delay robs a lot of that progression. And that's what I kind of struggle with now. If the global development delay wasn't there, what would his autism look like?
Yeah.
Where Tommy is very, very different, as you've probably seen, where he hasn't got global development delay. So he can read and type and do all these, use an AAC really successfully, and access the community in a beautiful way. And I never get sad about Tommy's days because I look at it and think, I want to live Tommy's days. Like, this guy is living his best life. Okay. And for Jude, that isn't the case. And I get so angry that the global development delay has robbed that from him.
So Alex has autism and is sharing his story and experiences to help others through his Instagram account at Alex Richardson on autism. He's also an ambassador for the National Autistic Society. Alex, welcome. How are you doing?
Hello, yes, I'm good, thanks. Yeah.
So could you just sort of, I guess, start by telling us a bit about your journey as a child living with autism to sort of now how it presents itself as an adult?
So I was diagnosed at 5 with autism and didn't really understand it until the age of 10. I knew I was different as I struggled with friendships in school. I was sensitive to noises and smells. School was difficult and I needed extra help with the learning side of things. But I was lucky enough to get extra help in class. I had a private tutor from the age of 8 to 16. This really helped me because I was able to pass all of my GCSEs. Secondary school was more challenging as I was different to other boys in the school I attended, and this resulted in bullying. College was really the making of me, and I was able to grow in confidence and be myself. I was able to open up about my autism without being judged by my other classmates. Having a hobby like running, it's one of the ways I manage my stress. I also go to the gym every day because I'm autistic and I like routines. So I do things over and over. Lots of autistic people have hobbies they're obsessed with. Luckily, mine's exercise. So I would encourage people to find something they really love and really enjoy as a hobby. There's barriers in life that I've had to get around, but I do it differently to other people. I might not do it straight away, but I'll get there eventually in the end. And I feel it's good to be different in that aspect.
Today we're joined by the lovely Ruby. Ruby has the account Ewan and Me on Instagram where she shares her brother Ewan's story. So Ewan is 23, diagnosed autistic, has a severe learning disability and is non-speaking. And Ruby describes on her Instagram about him reaching his crisis point various times over the last few years, even losing his sight in one of his eyes through a self-injury. So I think you can agree, Ruby, it's been a bit of a journey of difficulty, emotion, hardship, but filled with so much care and love. And we just wanted to start really by sort of acknowledging you and just saying how amazing you are, because you can see from your videos like what such an empathetic, warm and incredible woman you really are. And if our girls have the kind nature that you have towards your brother Ewan, we will be so incredibly proud of them. So we just wanted to say you're amazing and thank you for doing your account.
Thank you so much, guys. That means a lot to me.
You are, and it's really nice to see a sibling dynamic as well, because you see a lot of accounts from a parental perspective. Obviously that's kind of how Amy and I see the world with our children who are autistic too, but it's really lovely to see it from a siblings dynamic, because we often wonder what will it be like for our girls who are only very, very young at the moment. So it's great to get an insight into that world from just another angle.
Yeah, I think that's what's so special about Ewan and me, is that I had never really seen any accounts of siblings before. So for me, I felt it was an incredibly lonely journey. So if I could make any other siblings that's also going through what I'm going through, that make them feel less alone, then I'll be the one to start the trend.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you have, and we can empathise with that, because that's exactly how this podcast started.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're all in it together in a different way, aren't we? Different situations, but feeling sort of the same.
Yeah, just trying to help others really through what we're doing. Can you just start by telling us about Ewan, because your account on Instagram is so honest and open, but for those that haven't seen it, just a little bit of an insight into Ewan and his journey so far.
Yeah, of course. So Ewan, he's my big brother. Ewan was diagnosed actually slightly later than a lot of people are these days, I reckon. So he was diagnosed 2 weeks before I was born, so he was just nearly 3. So that was obviously a lot for my parents to process. My mum was heavily pregnant, and they just had this diagnosis. They didn't know what autism was. They'd never really heard of it. I mean, they were heartbroken, as every parent, they go through that grieving period. But I think these days, like, so many of us know the journey that they might potentially go on. My parents had no idea, so they kind of just took it each day as it came. And Ewan was a very happy toddler, very happy, like, preschooler. He went off to school. We have a local SEND school just 10 minutes away, which is really ideal. And he got on really well for a while, but when Ewan hit about the age of 8, that's when his behaviour became extremely challenging. And even though he was in this school designed for, complex needs and behaviour that might challenge, they said they couldn't they couldn't cope with Ewan's needs. They couldn't accommodate them, and his everyday life was about managing him rather than learning or developing or progressing in any way. And I don't know what it's like in England, but in Scotland, school need to say they can't cope, social work needs to say that this isn't working, and then home life kind of needs to say this isn't working for any kind of referral to go in for residential. And my parents did not want to put you into residential, as I'm sure, so as you guys as parents can also feel, that feels like a huge, I mean, it's against every natural instinct as a parent to do that. But what it had to come down to was, it wasn't in our best interests. It was going to break us as a family, but it wasn't us that couldn't cope. It was Ewan that couldn't cope. And it was, this was the decision for his best interests. And Ewan went to residential school when he was 11, and it changed his life around. He came on leaps and bounds, his communication, his understanding. He was using a fork and knife and, going out to different activities and stuff. I mean, he was experiencing life in a way we never knew was, there was a potential for. And then I think it was around 16, 17, we hit a rock again, and Ewan was in quite a depressive state, they described it as, and essentially the school wasn't working again. So he was looking at adult options anyway, so it came to the end of school time and he had to move out of that residential school anyway. So we put him into an adult placement, and it was amazing until it wasn't. All these things have been amazing until they aren't, essentially. Is the story of Ewan's life. It was really good until it wasn't. COVID hit, and essentially as soon as Ewan's needs became challenging, the provider, the placement he was in said, oh, well, we don't do with aggressive behaviour. And they terminated Ewan's placement, and we were kind of left with absolutely nothing, because I mean there's not placements just thrown around, you know, up here all over the country. In fact, like, there's not places for people as complex as Ewan, and the places he was in was for complex individuals. So the fact that they were saying we can't do this was terrifying for us, and we took him home because Ewan loves being at home. He loves his family, he loves his routines here, his activities here. He absolutely adores it. And we thought, well, this would be a great time for him to kind of be in a better place, and we'll get back to where we were before this regression. And that's when we realized Ewan had gone blind in one of his eyes. We took him into the hospital because I'd noticed his eye just looked different. I mean, like, Ewan's always had these distinctive, beautiful brown eyes, and it just looked funny. I mean, I just said to Mum, there's something weird going on with his eye. And eventually, when we did get into the opticians, which is a whole, you know, everyone, you know, appointments are difficult anyway. So getting him into an optician was a journey, and then we got in, and then they said he was blind, but there was the potential of maybe getting his sight back. So to try taking him into the hospital, which we did. That was a whole going under general anaesthetic, everything. And essentially, once he was under, they looked at his eye and they said, like, the damage is too far gone. So for us, that was, and my mum will always say this, that is the hardest thing, like, that we've ever gone through. Or the thing that breaks her heart the most about Ewan's journey is the fact that he lost his eyesight. And we have no idea really how long he lost it for before we found out. So he was, you know, no wonder his behaviour was challenging, because he was, the world that's already so limited to him was getting smaller and smaller. My parents have never, ever expected, and I think that is the biggest thing. They've never expected me to get Ewan dressed, or never expected me to get Ewan showered, or expected me to get his meds sorted. It's all been very much through this natural love and choice for Ewan, which has immediately taken away the idea of that they've put all this pressure on me to look after Ewan, or that I've been forced into doing it. It immediately takes it away, because I've never been asked to do it or expected to do it, because I've always chosen to do it. But there's certainly been times, like, don't get me wrong, like, there would have been times they've asked me to do a certain thing with Ewan, or sometimes, like, my mum wants me home, for example, next month, so that we can take Ewan to the theatre, because she couldn't do that alone, but she couldn't do it with my dad, so I need to come back for that. And I think they've managed to get, like, the perfect balance. I think now I'm, like, happy to do that kind of stuff, because they didn't have that pressure on me as a kid. And because I'm so, like, I dote on Ewan, so huge, massively, as everyone can see, like, I will do anything to spend that time with him.
Hello and welcome to Love Needs No Words. On today's episode, we are joined by Nicole Settle. Nicole is the lady behind ADHD Mum on Instagram, where she shares her journey about both her ongoing experience with neurodivergence and also that of her children. My gut says this is going to be a very good episode, because when I was speaking with Nicole earlier, she said she is a total open book. So brace yourselves. Also, a complete disclaimer, we are recording this episode on the hottest day of the year. We are melting. So if we're a bit giddy, this is why. So here goes. Hello, Nicole.
Hi. Freddie is very high needs autistic, in comparison to some. But Freddie's been on a canoe, he's been on a paddle board, he's been on a jet ski, he's been up a mountain, he's been on a plane. And listen, none of that's easy. Can I just say, like, it's not just like, oh yeah, we just take him and do this. Like, but he deserves the life experiences too. And I think that all the life experiences have just helped. They've just helped him in been down different areas, like different settings and sceneries, and being around different people. It's not easy. Like taking him out on the water, it's it's dangerous for one, but he absolutely loves it, and you've just got to try and manage it. And even the plane is a nightmare. The last time we were on the plane, Freddie literally shat on the seat before we'd even taken off. you know, nobody wants to smell that. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to be around that. Like, I was boking, like, literally on the plane. But it's like, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm the kind of person that's like, I don't care. Like
Yeah.
that's it and it's done. Yeah, it's stressful and everyone's staring and looking, but you're not going to see them again. So like, you just just sit down and get on with, you know, get a wine and just get on with your flight.